There's a name coming out of Las Vegas mandatory minicamp today that I genuinely didn't see landing this way, and I want to make sure it doesn't get swallowed by the quarterback conversation before it gets the attention it actually deserves. Because there's also something a Raiders assistant head coach said today about their quarterback room that, if you read it the way I'm reading it, tells you almost everything about how this entire season plays out at that position. Both of these things matter. We're going to cover both. But I'm starting with the name, because the name is the story that's going to age the best. Ezekiel Masses, rookie cornerback out of Cal, day one of mandatory minicamp in Las Vegas, and he's taking first-team starting reps lined up opposite Eric Stokes, not rotating in during individual drills to get comfortable with the pace of things, not working through the second-team periods while the veterans establish the tone on the other field. First team, first day, the opening session of the last organized team environment before training camp, and a rookie defensive back is already operating at the top of the depth chart. I need you to actually stop and process that before we go any further, because the temptation is going to be to read it as a footnote and move past it, and I think that instinct completely misses what's actually happening here. Mandatory minicamp operates at a different level of seriousness than anything that came before it in the off-season calendar. OTAs are voluntary. They have a loose, exploratory quality to them. Veterans manage their workload. Younger players are finding their rhythm, and the evaluations happening are real, but they exist within a framework of institutional patience. Mandatory minicamp removes all of that softness. Every player in that building is required to be there. Every coach is operating at full focus. Every decision about who lines up where and who works with which group is deliberate and observed and filed away. Nothing about the rotation is casual. Nothing about the groupings is accidental. So when the Raiders look at their cornerback room on the first day of this environment and decide that Ezekiel Masses belongs with the first-team defense, that's not a compliment. That's a verdict. That's the coaching staff telling everyone watching, including every veteran in that locker room, that they see something in this rookie that has already separated him from where most first-year players are at this point in June. Let me give you the actual background on Masses, because I think people are going to be doing quick searches on this name and getting a thin picture, and thin pictures breed dismissal. Masses spent 3 years at Florida International before transferring to Cal for his final college season. And that transfer, in retrospect, was the defining decision of his pre-draft journey, because at Cal he landed inside a defensive system that genuinely matched the way his football brain operates. What followed was one of the most disruptive seasons a college cornerback had that year, somewhere in the range of 17 or 18 passes defensed across the full year. That number doesn't come from raw athleticism alone. An athlete who is just relying on speed and length collects a few of those and gets beat on the ones that require anticipation. What Masses was doing was reading routes in real time, diagnosing what receivers were selling before the break, positioning himself with an understanding of angles and timing that you cannot see on a combine testing sheet. The football intelligence was there, living underneath the physical tools, and that combination is exactly what Robbie Leonard is trying to build his defensive identity around in Las Vegas. Because Leonard's vision for this defense is not subtle. It is a complete departure from what this organization has run in recent years, and I don't think that departure has been taken seriously enough in the national conversation. Leonard wants aggression. More man coverage, real man coverage, not the kind of soft zone heavy scheme that lets receivers work freely at the top of their routes and dares the secondary to clean things up reactively. He wants corners who can be trusted at the line of scrimmage, who can get physical with receivers at the release point, who can survive press coverage for an extended possession without needing safety help built into the design of the call. That is a specific ask. It requires a specific type of corner, and Masses spent his entire final college season doing exactly that. Pressing, disrupting, making receivers work for every step of every route from the first contact point forward. The Raiders didn't draft him despite the system. They drafted him for it, and day one of mandatory minicamp confirmed they're not going to waste time easing him into something he was already built to do. The comparison I keep gravitating toward when I think about this situation is Greedy Vance from a year ago. When Vance arrived, there was real excitement around him, legitimate buzz about what he could develop into, and people were tracking his reps with genuine interest. But Vance, at this same point in his first offseason, was working through second and third group reps, building trust incrementally, going through the standard rookie learning curve that this league has always demanded of defensive backs. That's not a criticism of Vance. That's the normal trajectory for the vast majority of corners entering the NFL, because the translation from college to professional football at that position is notoriously difficult, and the margin for error in man coverage is essentially zero. Masses is not on that trajectory. He walked in and claimed first-team reps on the opening day, which means the coaching staff is already operating in a different register when it comes to their confidence in him. You can't look at those two situations and call them equivalent. They aren't. Now the cornerback room itself is worth examining carefully, because this is where things get genuinely complicated from a roster standpoint. And the most interesting tension in this room is not actually about Masses. It's about what his immediate elevation says about Darian Porter. Porter came into this offseason as the presumed answer on the outside. He was supposed to be the established starter across from Stokes, the player whose job was his to lose rather than his to earn. His physical profile is the kind that makes scouts produce spreadsheets nobody asked for. Receiver to corner conversion, elite measurables, theoretical ceiling that makes evaluators light up in meetings. All of that is real. None of it is in question. But I have a long-standing position on corner conversions, and I've never walked it back. Physical tools are the admission ticket, not the credential. The thing that actually determines whether a converted receiver becomes a functional starting corner in a man coverage system is route recognition, the ability to read what a receiver is building toward before he builds it, to stay disciplined on double moves that veteran receivers have been deploying since their junior year of college, to process information at the line of scrimmage without the benefit of cushion that zone coverage provides. That skill comes from repetitions inside systems that demanded it. Masses has those repetitions. Porter's development in that specific area is still an open question. Porter is not losing his job today, and I want to be precise about that. But the competition at that outside cornerback spot is real now, in a way it wasn't 72 hours ago, and Masses is the reason. I want to get into the quarterback conversation now, because what came out of today goes deeper than the rotation itself, and I think the rotation has been getting all the attention while the more revealing detail is sitting right next to it being ignored. The structure stayed consistent. Kirk Cousins with the first unit, Aiden O'Connell with the second group, Fernando Mendoza as the third quarterback. That ordering has been steady throughout the entire offseason program, and nothing shifted today. But what Raiders assistant head coach Michael McCoy said when Mendoza and the quarterback room came up, I've been sitting with that statement since it dropped, and I think it's one of the more honest things a coaching staff has communicated publicly this entire offseason cycle. McCoy said there is a detailed plan for how the organization is going to manage their quarterback room. He said the plan specifically addresses how and when Mendoza will play. He said it will unfold over time, and the most important thing is to stick to it. Read that again slowly. A detailed plan unfolds over time. Stick to it. Those words, chosen carefully by a professional who does not accidentally say revealing things to reporters, are telling you something that no headline has properly extracted. That is not the language of a coaching staff navigating genuine uncertainty about how their quarterback situation resolves. Uncertainty produces hedged, non-committal language. We're evaluating everything. The competition is open. We're going to let it play out. McCoy said none of that. What he described is an organization that has already made its decisions, has a timeline built around those decisions, and intends to honor that timeline regardless of what any individual practice, preseason game, or wave of external pressure tries to do to it. Kirk Cousins starts week 1. O'Connell backs him up. And Mendoza, whatever he does between now and the end of the preseason, however many times he flashes in training camp, however loud the conversation gets if his reps are impressive, Fernando Mendoza is not starting this season. The plan says so. The plan is being protected. The parallel that keeps surfacing in my mind when I think about this is Mahomes in Kansas City during his rookie year. The Chiefs had Alex Smith, a competent professional starting quarterback who had absolutely earned his position, and by accounts from people who were in that building, Mahomes as a rookie was doing things against first-team defenses on the scout team that made veterans stop and look at each other. The coaches saw it, the players saw it, the awareness was there, and the organization still sat him for the entire season because the plan that had been built around his development was the plan they believed in, and no amount of practice field electricity was going to make them deviate from it before they were ready. That's exactly what McCoy described today in Las Vegas. Mendoza is the investment. The plan is the protection around that investment, and the plan runs on the organization's clock, not public perceptions. For what it's worth, I think this is the correct approach, and I want to actually make the case rather than just stating it. If Cousins goes down in week 4 and suddenly you're asking a rookie quarterback, one who hasn't had the full developmental runway the organization designed for him, to carry an NFL offense under live pressure with real consequences attached to every decision, that's not development. That's crisis management with a developing player in the middle of it. There is a meaningful and documented difference in this league between a quarterback who faces adversity after being built up gradually and a quarterback who gets thrown into the fire before the foundation is solid. Some guys survive the second scenario. A lot of them don't, and the damage it does isn't always visible in the moment, but it shows up later in ways that are hard to reverse. The Raiders are trying to build Mendoza the right way, and McCoy said as much today without using those exact words. Let the year breathe. Let him develop his reads and his timing and his pocket awareness in practice without the weight of a standings column sitting on his shoulders. And when the organization decides the moment is right, they'll put him in. That's the plan. Now you know it. Jackson Powers Johnson not participating in team periods today is something I want to address directly and honestly, because I think there's a responsible way to talk about this that isn't alarmist and isn't dismissive, and I want to try to find that balance. JPJ went through warm-ups. He was on the field during the early portions of practice, but when the team period started and the real work began, he was watching from the sideline while Caleb Rogers stepped into the right guard spot and took those first team reps. No official explanation was given. We don't know with certainty whether this is something precautionary, something that developed during warm-ups, a planned rest decision, or something more concerning. What I can tell you is the context, and the context matters. Mandatory minicamp is not the setting where you voluntarily sit out if you have any choice in the matter. These reps have real value. The chemistry you build with your quarterback and your line mates in June translates into tangible readiness when training camp opens and the pace elevates further. JPJ, standing on the sideline during team periods on the opening day of this environment, is worth tracking carefully, not catastrophizing over, tracking, because the history is real and availability has been a consistent concern with JPJ across his career, and this new coaching staff under Clint Kubiak is not going to apply the same standard of patience that previous regimes used when managing the question of whether this offensive lineman can be relied upon. New staff, new evaluation criteria, new threshold for how long they extend grace on availability questions. JPJ knows that. The people in that building know that. If there is something physically developing here, the window for organizational patience is narrower than it's ever been. Caleb Rogers taking those first team reps and handling them is useful information regardless of what's happening with JPJ. Rogers is a year ahead of Zun, the rookie who has been getting work at multiple positions along the right side throughout the offseason. The fact that when the opportunity opened up today, Rogers was the one who stepped into it, rather than Zun suggests the current internal hierarchy at that spot has Rogers ahead. That can change. Zun has real ability, and the Raiders invested draft capital in him for a reason. But right now, in this moment, in this competition, Rogers is the recognized next man up, and that's meaningful context going into training camp. Shedrick Jackson having a strong day at wide receiver is the kind of practice note I want to use as a door into something I've felt for a while about this Raiders offense, and haven't seen reflected anywhere in the national coverage. The receiving room in Las Vegas is more dangerous than it's being given credit for. Trey Tucker, Jalen Naylor, Jack Beck, Malik Benson, and now Jackson having a productive minicamp day on top of it. That is genuine depth. That is multiple players who, inside a coherent offensive system with stable quarterback play, can create problems for defenses. And I want to make a specific case for Tucker because I think he's been consistently undervalued in a way that becomes obvious once you apply context. Look at his production numbers, then look at the environment those numbers were produced in. The quarterback instability, the offensive chaos, the scheme changes and personnel disruptions that defined his early NFL career. Now compare him to a receiver like Christian Watson in Green Bay, operating in a sophisticated system with consistent quarterback play and one of the better offensive minds in the league calling plays around him. The statistical gap between those two receivers is not as wide as the narrative suggests. The contextual gap in their respective environments is enormous. Tucker with Kirk Cousins running a functional offense is a meaningfully different player than the Tucker we watched survive dysfunction. That offense has the potential to catch people off guard in September, and Jackson having a good day is one small piece of a larger pattern that I think becomes very visible very quickly once the real games start. Everything happening in Las Vegas right now is the beginning of a story that a new coaching staff is writing over the top of what the previous regime left behind. Kubiak's staff came in with a specific vision, a specific definition of what kind of player they want, what kind of identity they're building, and what the organization's priorities look like when decisions get made. The players who felt secure under the previous staff are not automatically secure under this one. History in this league is very clear on that point. New regimes rearrange hierarchies. They find value in unexpected places, and they expose limitations that comfortable situations had been covering up. The training camp cuts this summer are going to communicate exactly what this organization values and who fits that vision. Some of those decisions are going to be surprising. Some of the players who feel settled right now are wrong about how settled they actually are. Today was the first day of mandatory minicamp. Masses stepping into first-team reps is an early sentence in that story. McCoy's words about a detailed plan are another. JPJ on the sideline is another. The story isn't close to finished, but the direction it's moving in is already visible if you're reading carefully.